Welcome, everybody. My name is David Graham. I am a lawyer at Gardner Law. It's an FDA law firm in Minneapolis. And I'm glad to welcome you to a program on food safety that's presented by the Food Law Center, which is part of the Health Law Institute at Mitchell Hamlin School of Law. The Food Law Center has food law classes, including general food law, food labeling, food safety, as well as a class on litigating foodborne illness matters. We also have a concentration in food law, so you can get uh, a recognition for taking certain classes and doing work outside the school in the area of food law. We also have externships and symposia like this one that we do once or twice a year, depending on what's going on. And a lot is going on these days. So we put this together on food safety because of recent past events and changes that are possible in the future. Um, we have an there's going to be a recording available, and the details on that will be in the chat. So look at that as the program goes on, and you'll find out how that will be available to you in the future. If you have questions, put them in the chat. I'll try to monitor that. You can ask the questions as we go. Put them in as you think of them. To the extent it's possible, I'll introduce them into the conversation because that's what this is. While there'll be introductory remarks by the speakers, we're happy to address your questions as they come. So now I get the honor of introducing the panel, which we're very fortunate to have. And because these people know a lot about the subject matter for today, come from different um, uh, places in the industry and have different skills and education. So you should get a wide variety of views about food safety and what has been happening and changes that are occurring. I'm going to start by introducing Casey Lynn Gallimore. She's a senior director of regulatory policy at the Mead Institute. Casey Lynn Gallimore serves as the senior director of regulatory policy at the Mead Institute, where she provides analysis and expertise on a variety of topics, including food safety, processing animal welfare, and cybersecurity. Prior to joining the Mead Institute, um, Casey spent 7 years in the food industry in food safety, quality assurance, and regulatory compliance roles. She has worked in FDA and USDA regulated facilities, ranging from chocolate and ingredient manufacturing to portion cut steaks and market hog slaughter. Casey earned her Bachelor of Science in Biology from Truman State University with minors in chemistry and the justice system. Jay Ellingson, a PhD, is the Chief Scientific Officer at Quick Trip Inc. In 1995, Dr. Ellingson received his PhD in molecular microbiology from Marquette University in Milwaukee. Dr. Ellingson did his postdoctoral fellowship training with the USDA Agricultural Research Service National Animal Disease Center in Ames, Iowa, where he developed and patented a molecular diagnostic method for the detection of John's disease in dairy cattle. This method has been applied to the detection of the specific bacterium in both meat and dairy products. He then serves as staff molecular microbiologist with the USDA Animal and Plant Inspection Service Center for Veterinary Biologic in Ames. In 2006, Dr. Ellingson became the chief scientific officer at Quick Trip. He is responsible for the development and execution of Quick Trip Inc.'s food protection system, which includes all aspects of food protection, food safety science, food regulations, and food defense. Dr. Ellingson is an adjunct professor in the microbiology department at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse and has mentored and graduated several Masters of Science students in the microbiology program. Dr. Ellingson has been a member of numerous state and federal food protection related boards and associations. He has authored numerous scientific articles and publications and has many more credentials that I didn't want to read because it makes me feel inadequate. Ryan Osterholm is also joining us. Ryan has dedicated his entire legal career to representing people injured by foodborne illness. His passion is holding food producers accountable when they poison their customers. His unending goal is to make the food we eat safer. Ryan has a decade's worth of experience in foodborne illness litigation. He has represented people in every major foodborne illness outbreak during that time. Ryan gravitated to the science-driven foodborne illness practice in part because he comes from a medical family. His sister is a neonatologist at the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. His mother is a former nurse practitioner. His father is an infectious disease epidemiologist. He has been around foodborne illness outbreaks and investigations since before he could walk. So we're glad to have Ryan here. When he's not working, he's growing 1,000 nearly 1,000-pound pumpkins. Another food expertise you didn't know you were going to get today. Sean Stevens, who helped me organize this program and is also a member of the Food Law Center Advisory Board, as is Ryan. And Ryan has also in the past taught the foodborne illness litigation class at Mitchell Hamlin. Sean is the founding member of Food Industry Council LLC, the only firm in the United States that represents the food industry exclusively. As a food industry consultant and lawyer, Sean works with food industry clients, including the world's largest growers, processors, restaurant chains, distributors, and grocers, helping them protect their brand by complying with FDA and USDA regulations, reducing risk, managing recalls, and defending high-profile foodborne illness claims. Sean also speaks regularly to national and international audiences on a wide variety of emerging scientific, regulatory, and food safety trends. So thank you all for joining. And we're going to start out by getting a view of what is going on in food safety from each of our panelists. And I'm going to start with you, Sean. So why don't you go ahead and give us your perspective, and we'll address questions as they come and as I interpose them.
That sounds great, David. Thank you so much for the introduction. I want to thank the distinguished panelists for joining us today. What a great opportunity to get some extremely high-level perspectives on recent changes in the administration and the potential impact on the regulators, the regulations themselves, and industry, the current status of actual or anticipated policy enforcement or regulatory enforcement changes that may be on the horizon, and the current status of civil litigation risks exposure and different things companies perhaps can do to avoid, right, that risk or exposure. It's a really great panel, and I'm honored to be a part of it. If we look at some of the broader trends from my perspective, I want to talk a little bit about what we witnessed in 2024 with respect to changes in regulatory approaches towards mainly pathogens and some of the significant, I guess I would say, just changes that we witnessed over the course of the last 18 or so months. And then the rest of the panel, I think we'll have a discussion and be able to add additional insight as to what we think the future holds and where we go from there. But, one of the things we saw early in 2024 was a shift in both on the FDA and USDA side in the regulators' approach towards Listeria control. And in the past, from my experience, when a company had a product that was in the market that tested positive for Listeria, a ready-to-eat product, or if through its own testing, maybe it had a test and hold failure and product was released that was positive and they had to bring it back, the regulatory agencies allow those companies to very precisely, do their root source investigation, determine what the problem was, contain it, and limit it, to a shift or to a particular line in many cases. And I think those days are gone. What we've seen is the regulators having they're more inclined to really test companies' internal determinations, to force broader recalls and not accept the company's determination with respect to the narrowness of that a problem might be, and actually forcing companies to cast a wider net and recall broader products. The other change we saw early in the year, and as it carried throughout the year with a number of larger scale recalls involving Listeria, was the agent and Salmonella. The agency's request, or in some cases, direction or command that the company stop producing food products until the agency was satisfied that whatever issue occurred was identified and corrected to the agency's satisfaction, which is something that we didn't see in the past. Usually, when we had an issue, those companies were allowed to continue producing while we did that regulatory ballet and worked with the agencies to get their concerns addressed. Well, now we're seeing the regulators force companies to shut their doors, at least until the problems are fixed. So that was a big change. And then more recently in December, we saw USDA issue its new Listeria guidance notice, making some changes to its approach to Listeria controls in facilities. And what we saw in the guidance was requirements that USDA conduct basically weekly interviews or questionnaires with food companies directed at trying to determine whether they had a good Listeria control program, and B, whether they may have some Listeria control issues. And what we kind of saw from that guidance was memorializing what we saw, how we saw the agencies reacting in the previous 12 months with respect to their approach to companies' Listeria control. So, all of this was very new. And then layered on top of that, we had a number of larger scale recalls in the last 12, 18 months. And we're seeing now, especially with the regulators' response to the companies, the insurance companies are now kind of following suit. And when we have these recalls, sitting back and asking themselves, maybe we should do a deep dive into the history of this company's food safety programs and whether they've been effectively implemented to determine, just like the regulators would do, whether there were failures that could have been avoided and whether the recall that occurred, or God forbid, an outbreak, could have been avoided. And if so, puts the insurance company in position to make a determination whether insurance will even be available. And they may say, you know what, this is an instance you could have prevented. The government forced you to recall more product than you normally would have, and they forced you to shut your doors. It must have been pretty bad. So we see now the availability of insurance being threatened, perhaps. And then just in closing, I'll say, we've continued to see over the course of last year, when there are outbreaks that make people sick, very close scrutiny to see if there is any merits to DOJ involvement, trying to take a close look at what happened and determine if enhanced civil or criminal penalties might be appropriate. So those are sort of broad stroke changes we've seen in the last 24 months. They're pretty significant in my view, and it'll be interesting to see what happens as we move forward with the new administration, where this kind of all goes.
Thanks, Sean. Casey, what would you like to say in the introduction here?
Thank you very much. And pleasure to be on this panel today talking about a very important topic, not just for the entire industry, but obviously very specific to the meat industry. So
sorry to interrupt you, Casey.
uh,
Could you say a little bit about the Meat Institute? Because
that's
not
what
a
I
lot
was
of
about to
people might
do.
know about it that aren't closely connected or working in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I work at the Meat Institute, which is a trade association which represents packers and processors of meat and poultry. Our members, it is a member-based organization. Our members make the vast majority of animal protein that you eat on a regular basis. So we have over 300 packer processor members that are operating over 800 USDA inspected establishments in the United States. It's many of the big names that you would recognize and a lot of little names that are smaller, more regional focused packers and processors. So our role as a trade association is to support those folks in what they do so that they can do their job and feed the world. And so there's a lot of different ways that we do that. One of the ways is providing food safety and regulatory support. So obviously, we were racked by what happened in 2024. I think there's a lot of folks that like to focus on one of the incidents, but one of the things I like to remind folks is there wasn't just one incident in 2024. There were several And unfortunately, several deadly incidents relating to Listeria monocytogenes specifically. But that wasn't our only issue. I think, you know, agree with everything that Sean said. We're going to see the wake of what happened in 2024 will be long. I think we still have not seen all the changes that we are likely to see from USDA in response to the events of 2024. I think we as an industry are still responding. Um, we're still, trying to focus on what happened, what can we do to prevent, this from happening again. Um, as far as what happened, I think there's been a lot of discussions from an industry, and there was nothing new or unique or different about Listeria, about the pathogen, about how it reacts. What we have identified is that we have been going through a transition. We had a good run, a very good run as an industry. And in the time period that we had a really good run, we lost a lot of institutional knowledge. We lost a lot of the folks, both in the industry and in the government agencies, who had been through the muck 20 years ago when we were not having a good run. And so we lost some of those folks that not only really truly understood from living through it what we needed to do to control Listeria, but also the why and how it truly impacted folks. So that's what we're trying to get back to, is those basic practices that need to be in place to make sure people not only understand what they need to do, but why they need to do it and the true importance of it, and make sure that that is reflected at all levels within a company, not just your boots on the ground food safety folks. It really has to be throughout the entire company culture. I always tell our members when we're talking about what's coming, what is on the regulatory agenda, what we think the agencies are going to do, all of that flies out the window when you have a major outbreak, especially one with significant illnesses, especially one where you have deaths. And that's exactly what happened to us. We were very focused on salmonella, and that's where the regulators were really focused. And all of a sudden, we have pivoted and we are turning. We're not losing focus on salmonella, but obviously Listeria popped up as something that we need to be addressing more. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, and I look forward to further discussion. You are muted,
Nope.
David.
Dr. Ellingson, sorry, I'm going to turn to you next because you
Sure.
actually make products. But just so people have, and Ryan will ask you to also talk about this, but not only would we like to hear about Quick Trip's food production business, because that's obviously what you drive and protect, but also the difference between the pathogens and why Listeria might be different. And so if people out there don't understand the differences, they might get a better grasp of why we're saying this was unusual or different or something like that. Is that okay?
Sure. Well, David, thank you. And I appreciate being on the panel. And there's a lot of discussion we'll probably go through over the next hour or so here while we're sitting on this Zoom call. I mentioned earlier that I'm the chief science officer here at Quick Trip. I've been with the company about 20 years. Some of you probably on this call don't understand that we're a family-owned business based out of La Crosse, Wisconsin. We own about 900 retail stores in 6 states currently, soon to be 7. We own and operate 8 production facilities, and we self-distribute to those stores. So when you go into a Quick Trip, and a lot of people don't understand this, but about 90% of what's sold in our stores comes out of our distribution center in La Crosse. And of that, the products that are in the stores, about 65% are manufactured here on site in La Crosse. So you look at the 8 production facilities, and when we were starting to talk about putting this panel together, I got thinking about driving home one night. I thought about we serve about 12 million guests a week in those 900 stores. And so it becomes a real challenge as things move in the government, things slide with the legal side of the business. Our goal is to protect public health, number one, with the food products we sell, and then also on the side note is to protect the brand. And so you talk about, managing risk inside of an organization like this. I think our company a long time ago, the owners agreed that science needed to be a part of that process. And so um, we've implemented programs in place since back in 2006 that literally manages risk, if you will, through a science-based process. So the things that have changed with the government recently, and it has had some impact on our company, is that we've had to really, really, really ratchet up the things that we had already implemented back in 2006. And why do I say that? Well, when you serve 12 million guests a week, you understand what the risk is. And we do have a kitchen commissary in our campus here that is USDA inspected. And so, ironically enough, it serves both FDA and USDA products that come out of that facility. And so we have a unique environment where you have one line that might be a USDA line, and right next to it is a FDA line. And so managing that with science is its own situation. Where are we at today? Over the last 3 years, we anticipated that, with the outbreaks that were taking place, the deaths that had taken place in the industry, and I'm not talking just about USDA side of the business, I'm talking about also things with leafy greens and so on and so forth. We realized we needed to ratchet up the programs that we had internally. And so I'd like to get into a conversation as we kind of go through the day here about what we've done with Salmonella and Listeria. We do that. That is a major focus for us. I do believe after these events that took place in, early 2024 and moving into 2025, what we're seeing with the federal government is that there is a ratcheting up, if you will, with on-site inspectors asking very targeted questions about the programs that we have on a weekly basis, even to the point of, where does this science lead to managing our risk in our organization? So, I think the changes in some cases are good. I think it's going to be a challenge, though, down the road for some companies that don't have the systems and have the resources to manage these risks as they start ratcheting this up over the next, 2 to 4 years. And so, I think that will become a challenge inside the food supply chain in the country. So our organization, again, we have the 8 production facilities, only one of which is, under the tutelage, if you will, of the USDA inspection process. But with that said, FDA still has as well ratcheted up their inspection process along with the states around the upper Midwest area. So I guess I'll leave it at that. We're seeing a lot of changes going on. We do have really good communication with state and federal agencies. We're a little bit unique business. We do open up our doors. We have an event that we have in September where we invite in all the regulatory agencies to that event. They literally get to look under the hood, if you will, here on campus and see what we do. And we feel that's important to have that collaboration with the government as they are inspecting us, but we want them to understand that we are transparent in our process. So I think I'll leave it at that, and then we can get into other further discussions.
Yes, thank you very much. Ryan, can you talk about a little more about what you do, what you're seeing, and also about the impacts of the pathogens on the people you represent so people can understand a little bit about why this is important. So at the end of the day, everybody's trying to prevent illness. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you, David. And
Yeah.
I probably have a little bit of a unique role on this panel in that, I represent these people, and sometimes the industry folks think that I'm kind of their adversary. But I know that, Sean and Dr. Ellingson, who I've worked with professionally in the past, I don't think that they would agree with that, because we all want the same thing. All of us want the same thing, which is safe food. It's not good for industry. It's not good for consumers. It's not good for anyone. Unfortunately, my role in this is to pick up the pieces when things go wrong. So I exclusively represent people who are sickened with foodborne illness in pretty much the United States. Um, so I founded OFT Food Safety Law about 6 years ago with another lawyer that we broke off from to kind of solely focus on foodborne illness law and really try to learn and know everything there is about this from a plaintiff's legal standpoint. There's only a handful of firms in the country that really focus on this particular subject area. And so it's something that I'm able to devote really every professional waking minute to this. And that, learning about what happens and what doesn't happen and how these things happen, and pursuing compensation for individuals that have suffered foodborne illness. The types of cases that I'm normally involved in are, well, right now, I represent about 30 individuals who were sickened in the Boar's Head Listeria monocytogenes outbreak, which Casey had referred to. And that is one of the largest listeria outbreaks that we've had in probably about a decade. Probably since Jensen Farms cantaloupe. And it was somewhat unique in that previous listeria outbreaks that we had seen were frequently in much smaller operators or very unique products, imported products or a unique product. And so this was the first listeria outbreak that we've dealt with in this particular meat product that made this many people sick with such a high profile brand. And so it was something that was in the vernacular of most Americans. Almost everyone has heard of it. And certainly that's not what they wanted. And I think that, we're working through that. And I think that they have done, my personal editorial is that they certainly want to get better and are certainly doing that. But there's very, very few things that are an existential crisis to food companies like a major foodborne illness outbreak. We've seen it time and again, and there's things, and that's what the other panelists here are trying to instill in their clients and the folks that they work for is that this is something that you got to take very, very, very seriously. We represent several individuals who died in the outbreak. We represent several individuals who are brain injured in the outbreak. And that's the very, very difficult thing about listeria vis-a-vis other pathogens that I more frequently work with. Listeria is relatively rare in a total amount of illnesses per year. However, the consequences of Listeria monocytogenes infection are usually extremely grave. So one of the things that is, well, frankly scary for me and what I do from a regulatory framework and is I just think there's just a ton of unknowns right now. How I prove my cases really is through the records that I'm able to obtain from investigatory agencies. Usually the heavy lifting is done on the state and local level. And those perhaps are a little less affected by what's going on, but certainly affected, at least from a funding standpoint. But on the federal level, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. Right now, if you do a FOIA request to the Centers for Disease Control, you'll get an automatic email saying that the entire FOIA office is on administrative leave. And that's not good for anyone, because the industry needs to know, to have access to things as well. And need to know, and frankly, they have a right to know, especially if they're being implicated in an outbreak and, they hire individuals like Sean. They have every right to know, well, what are you seeing? How are you coming up with this? And, you can make a judgment call, whether that's, they got it right or not. And obviously no one's perfect. But right now, you know, if I was to wave a wand and predict the future of